lately I've been contemplating on the way that like true living, really being alive is something that's done unconsciously. Always was done unconsciously. Like the essence of life is this movement, this constant regeneration of cells, of tissues, this thing that happens before any conscious mind can create a story about it. And I know I come here and I tell stories because that's just what I do. But more and more I'm so aware that my story is just a story, and it could be told in 1,000 different ways. It could be looked at from a million different angles. And so the story could be it could be the same experience, but told in a completely different, with completely different storylines. And so the story is just something that my mind does after the fact. And after the fact, it's like just after the fact, it's because this mind body, as opposed to the conscious ego mind, moves before. Life is just happening on this unconscious level. And then we see it and we need to make a story about what it means, so that we keep a sense of selfhood. Wow, that brought something to my mind. Yeah, it's here. I'm gonna read a small portion from the poem "A Seeming Stillness" by David Whyte. It came into my mind about an hour ago. Don't know why, just from nowhere. This phrase came to mind because it's so beautiful. I'm not going to read the whole poem here, but this part that sticks with me and sometimes reverberates, and today it just came back. We are all a sunlit moment come from a long darkness. What moves us always comes from what is hidden. What seems to be said so suddenly has lived in the body a long, long time. A sunlit moment. A sunlit moment come from a long darkness. We are all a sunlit moment come from a long darkness. What moves us always comes from what is hidden. What is hidden? What seems to be said so suddenly, what seems to be said so suddenly has lived in the body for a long, long time. What we say, what we do, what comes out of us when we allow ourselves to not be so stuck in a story, it really is just an unconscious movement that comes, this sunlight that comes from a seeming darkness, right? A long darkness where it seems like there's nothing happening, where it seems like there's the silence of creation. And from that silence, something comes. What seems to be said so suddenly has lived in the body for a long, long time. Long, long time. Yeah. Our body is creating memory that is beyond our conscious memory. We're always holding on to memories consciously to keep our ego self alive, to keep the story so that we can create a plan and a strategy of how to move through life. And in the meantime, there's this unconscious thing that moves us that comes from what is hidden. Comes from what is hidden. Also, what I like in this piece of this poem is I feel the sense that I have, and of course it's the sense that I have as a splenic, spontaneous being, but the sense that I have is it really speaks the truth of splenic spontaneity and an emotional life, because what seems to be said so suddenly has lived in the body for a long, long time. And my experience of the emotional field from emotional beings around me is this processing of something within the body that gets that is so deep. Yeah, it's a depth that I will never really know. And what comes out of someone who's emotional comes out with so much music, particularly if it's the individual stream. So much music, so much, there's so much frequency in what comes out, and in a conversation that seems to be spontaneous, right? Because it's just happening in the moment. Whatever comes out of that emotional being has really potentially been processing for a long time. And speaking with someone who has allowed their process to be inside them without blurting it out in the middle of the process. Wow, the frequency of that is so much depth. And so regardless, whenever we're all living here and now, there's nothing else. There's really nothing else. And some of us spontaneously pull things from we don't know where, but it's more surfacey in a way. And others are pulling something up from the depths of a process of a deep well, a huge orchestra. That's what it feels like. But it's still like the cleanest frequency is the unconscious frequency. It's the frequency of not trying to do anything, not trying to say anything, and allowing the frequency of life to move through us as the receptors of life that we are and the transmitters of life. So we are filters. We are filters of the consciousness field in all very unique ways. And when our ego mind, the not self, ego personality mind, can sit on the back burner and watch, then it's just then it really is just a filtering. And I'm not there. I mean, I'm there in a different way than I was a year ago or months ago. I feel the frequency of that now. It's a completely different frequency, and it feels so good when I feel that frequency that it goes back to what I've mentioned before. But I always think of a tuning fork. It's a self-tuning process where the body in effect feels the clean note that comes out in those moments. And so it just continues to search for that frequency and to little by little clean up the distortion. And so that the frequency gets clearer. And in getting cleaner, it gets so much more specific and highly defined. And who we are becomes so much narrower, so much more differentiated, to use the word from human design, differentiated. And that is what came to me too, there's a piece in this poem that also, here it is. Because the process is a process that you if you listen to Ram Dass, you hear Ram Dass speaking about it a lot, which is the process of becoming nobody. And he talks about, well, before you become nobody, first you become somebody. You go through the process in life of becoming somebody. And then once you become somebody, then you little by little get rid of it until you're becoming nobody. And I remember when I first heard him speaking about this, I was like, something in there rings with some truth, and I have no idea how to go about that. And paradoxically, and I don't know, but what I'm watching and having a sense of, and I could totally be wrong, but the feeling that I have at the moment is that the process of differentiating is such a surrender to the specifics of your selfhood in a way that you actually do not have any control, and you have no conscious control of what that is. You begin to witness it and watch it appear in such a specific, true self way in your separate selfness. But in that process, there is the potential to simply dissolve into complete beingness, because what you witness is that it's not your life, it's life. It's the life. The life that's living through you as a filter of consciousness in its own rhythm and flow. And so in that is where I feel, I don't know, I don't hold on to the certainty of it, but I get a whiff of differentiating into somebody and becoming nobody. Because all the things we hold on to are all the conscious, not self, ego mind stuff. And living unconsciously is letting go of all of it. Becoming your own authority is actually allowing the authority to take control. So it's not like I'm going to become my own authority and in that way I'm going to challenge all the authority out there and do all the things that I think that I don't, I can get really mental about that. They think they're my authority. Well, they're not my authority. I'm going to do what I think is right. And actually, it's getting rid of this thing too. So that the authority is a complete unconscious process. And surrendering to that means surrendering into your life, which is really just surrendering to life. So in this poem, A Seeming Stillness by David Whyte, he also, the next phrase, he says, our life like a breath, then, a give and a take, a bridge, a central movement between singing a separate self and learning to be selfless. Our life like a breath. Our life like a breath then, a give and a take, a bridge, a central movement between singing a separate self and learning to be selfless. Singing a separate self, like surrendering into your particular spot in the universe, your particular direction, your particular geometry, your particular fractal, all of it, just surrendering into it. And then in that process, like, who is the self? Because it's just the life. It's just life. And everything is ultra personal and completely impersonal. Yeah, well, the paradoxes. Learning to love the questions and the paradoxes, and everything I say here, I don't have any certainty about any of it. It's just feelings. It's just sensations I have. It's just things that I'm watching. But who knows what I'll say tomorrow about it? Maybe something totally different. I don't know. Because the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. If you put a word on it, you've put a whole concept on something that is far beyond the conceptual mind's capacity to nail down. Beyond it. It's life. It's life itself. And I'm more and more aware of the extreme limitations of my ability to put into words the experience, because the experience is experience. Yeah. So just read that one last part, that part. We are all a sunlit moment come from a long darkness. What moves us always comes from what is hidden. What seems to be said so suddenly has lived in the body for a long, long time. Our life, like a breath then, a give and a take, a bridge, a central movement between singing a separate self and learning to be selfless.